Hey everyone, good Wednesday night and welcome to Bowling with the Fef, a platform for you to share your unique bowling story live on our YouTube channel. It is a great night. We are getting toward the end of the fall and winter bowling season, so a lot of folks have roll-offs. They're getting ready to call it a season, hopefully with some high scores and great bowling over the past 8 months, whatever it takes you to get through a league or tournament season. Hopefully you had some great scores. Our guest tonight certainly has had a year to remember. We're going to talk about her about that in a little bit, and can't wait to do it as usual. I want to give a big shout out to KR Strikeforce. KR had me on their pregame show for the PBA playoffs over the weekend. Hopefully you got a chance to check it out. It was a lot of fun. Matt Farber does that down in the Chicagoland area. We talked about the bracket for the PBA playoffs. And if you followed my picks, you understand that I am horrible, just awful at picking the winners for these matches. The one thing I did get right, I think, is that the majority of them go to a roll-off. That's about all I had right on this. I messed up the Belmonte O'Neill match. Bill O'Neill took that one. Messed up the Rash and Troop match. Kyle Troop was the winner there. The one that I did pick correctly was Don Barrett to take out Packy Hanrahan. And then Chris Prather went and beat Brad Miller, which was another pick that I didn't get correct. But hopefully you didn't bet any money based on my picks because, you are probably not all that happy in general or with me at this point. But it was a lot of fun to do. And hopefully you're enjoying the PBA playoffs. They continue again this Saturday and Sunday. So looking forward to seeing some great PBA action on FS1. And we will see who is going to be at the top of the heap in the PBA playoffs. If you're familiar with our show, you know that Bowling with the Fef is brought to you by Chip Magnet Salsa. Chip Magnet is a local company here in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, distributing quality salsas, relishes, and more to stores in 38 states and Canada. Now, if you are in the Twin Cities metro area, you can find Chip Magnet at Whole Foods, Nolan's, Festival, Kowalski's, Lunds and Byerly's, and most all small co-op stores. But even if Chip Magnet isn't in your neighborhood grocery store, you can find it right at your fingertips by going to chipmagnetsalsa.com. They are ready to take your order for a fine salsa product. If I do say so myself, Chip Magnet, raise your snack standards. So let's head over to the Twin Cities metro area where our guest has been tearing up the lanes this season. Her name is Justice Schihl. We're calling this episode Raising the Bar because it seems like with every step of the way, Justice, you are raising the bar higher and higher in the sport of bowling, and you must be very proud of that.
Yeah, it's been a great season. I'm incredibly happy with how I have performed this season. I still have a long way to go, but every year I seem to get better and better, and that's all you can ask for in the sport.
Yeah, for sure. The highlight of your season, I'm going to assume, is the Minnesota women's record 3-game series of 868. And we're going to get through the details of that a little later on. But now that you've had a little more than a month to kind of let that sink in, what does it feel like to have a number like that, let's face it, most of us won't even come close to?
Unreal. I think I still have to pinch myself sometimes to say, wow, I actually shot 868. And like you said, there's a ton of people in the sport of bowling who are incredible bowlers who, just haven't had a fortune to throw it that high of a set. And I just had a great night, and that's all I can say really about it.
Yeah. You are a regular league bowler, bowling many nights a week. You're a regular tournament competitor. And I've got to ask, I mean, there is a PWBA event coming to a center that you know very well, Cedarvale Lanes in Eagan, coming up next month. Will we see you competing against the best in the world in that PWBA Twin Cities Open?
I'm going to dip my toe in it. I'm not going to go to the full open. I don't think I'm quite there yet. I think there's still a lot of aspects of my game that I need to work on, but I'm going to dip my toe in the regional just to get it out, see where I am matched up to, still some of the best bowlers out there. I think that's kind of where I'm at in my stage of bowling. So.
Sure. That's great to hear. Is there a particular spot that shows you that will be a successful endeavor? Is it cashing? Is it winning the whole thing?
Obviously, I want to win. I'm very competitive. I don't really accept losing, but I think if I can go out there and know that I threw the ball really well, and know that even though, maybe it wasn't a winning spot or a cashing spot, but I really performed at my best, I think that's when I would be like, okay, you're not going to win every tournament. You're not going to cash in every tournament, but maybe that is my sign of I can kind of step out into the PWBA a little more. I don't think it's something that I want to do, full time. I have a day job. I love my day job. And I love where I am at my life, but it is something that I think I would do some stops.
Yeah. I brought it up earlier. My sponsor is Chip Magnet. Mr. Chip Magnet, Jim Lucas, is fully impressed by that number 868. I know he hasn't seen me get anywhere near that. I know he personally hasn't gotten anywhere near that. But it is a lot to be impressed about. And I hope you're enjoying kind of the aftermath of that.
Yeah, it's been fun. Yeah. I think that's the best way to put it for right now.
Cool. Those of us who spend a lot of time in this sport certainly don't start out shooting 868. We go through years and years of, becoming better, refining our games. And you had to start somewhere. And in your case, that was states away in Michigan. Where did you grow up, and how did you originally get into, let's face it, the greatest sport of them all?
So I grew up in a town called Lapeer, Michigan. It's a small town right outside of Flint. Born and raised. I got in, bowling is weird in Michigan because it actually is a really big sport. But it's like a hidden big sport. Specifically in Flint and Detroit, it used to just be really big. We had an absurd amount of centers everywhere you went. But my dad bowls, and his whole side of the family bowls, and my mom was one of those people that said you need to do something. And I did do everything. I played everything, but at the age of 8, I decided I wanted to bowl in a bowling league. So I did like an afternoon league with my brother and my best friend, and we did that for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. And my first couple of years, you're throwing the straight ball, you're throwing that T-zone, that everybody starts out with, and you get the deal of the $98 with the shoes and the bag and the ball. And probably when I was turned like 12 is when I realized that I could be relatively good at the sport. And that's when I kind of started to expand into hooking the ball, into getting out of a plastic ball and into a resin. My first ball was a storm ball and it smelt like a tropical breeze. And so Then, at that time, I was starting to go to Pepsi tournaments. We were doing states, mixed doubles, whatever, the Flint area had to offer for us. And then we'd venture out for twice a year out of this Flint area. And I grew up, I bowled in this bowling alley. It's called Girl X Bowling Center. At the time, growing up, I had 12 lanes, and it was one of the toughest houses in the state of Michigan for a really long time, because it was still hard, or it was still wood. It wasn't synthetic yet. And I kind of grew up at that period of time when bowling alleys were either fully synthetic or starting to transition into synthetic. And I just so happened to got to grow up on a wood house, which is honestly really hard. I think it's partly why I am the bowler I am today, is because that house was hard.
Yeah. And along with the challenges and the, the physical part of getting your game where it needs to be, you have to be mentally strong too. I messaged with Tanya Kaiser, who told me that as a person, you're driven, hardworking, dedicated, and that you can see the passion that you have in your eyes with everything you do. You're also a genuine person, and what you see is what you get. Did that come from somewhere? Is that something you kind of, made yourself along the way, or does it kind of rest with your parents or your family?
I'm going to be honest. Growing up, I was a hothead. I would get so mad, so frustrated, so easy, because I'm so competitive and I am so driven. But being a genuine person, yeah, that's definitely my mom. She's very much what you see is what you get. My grandpa as well. We're not people who really like to, hide behind fake, or, I'm not going to go, and that's just not who we are. And that's never been who I am. So that's normal. But and the driven and the hardworking and all of that is absolutely in my family. My mom's one of the hardest working people I know, along with my grandpa. My grandpa was very hardworking and very driven, and he's a lot of the reason I am who I am today. My family calls me Ray Jr., which is my grandpa's name, because I'm just like him. So.
Cool. Our friend of the show, Rocky Harrison, says wood lanes are the best. And yeah, as you learn you refine your craft on a challenging condition, on a challenging lane surface, I think that's the best way to get better. And the proof is in the pudding here, I think. And Jim says yes, fully. He is fully impressed by the 868. So let's talk about, kind of those early years. You talked about your folks and your grandfather as far as their influence on the mental side of the game. Did you have any direct coaching as you were making your way through juniors?
Not really, which kind of sucks, because I think I could have really, really benefited from having a coach fully. I had Vicky and Natalie Gerlach, they're the owners of Girl X Bowling Center. They coached me as what they could, as best they could. And then I got into high school, and my freshman and sophomore year coach, they knew bowling. I think that's the best way to say it, is they knew the sport of bowling, but they didn't know how to teach others how to bowl, or how to, some of the key things you need to learn in bowling, especially in 9th, 10th grade, is fundamentals. How to shoot out your spares, flatten your hand. What kind of ball works best in your hand, because that stuff you don't know. Like, you're not going to learn that unless somebody tells you. So, and then my junior year, I did finally get a pretty good coach. And he knew that I could be really good, and he worked with me constantly. But then it got to the point where he just couldn't, so I was surpassed him. So he sent me out to another coach in Grand Blanc Lanes. I met with him a couple times. but as like a consistent there to work on every aspect of my game, no, not
Yeah,
really. Not in those years at least.
sure. Tell me about, despite not having that direct coaching early on, was there a pretty substantial junior program where you were?
Oh yeah. Gosh, coming from the area of Flint, Michigan, I grew up with some of the best bowlers in the youth area. I bowled with Andrew Anderson growing up. Tyler Green's another really good bowler out there. I had a lot of girls who I bowled with that went on to bowl college. And then in the state of Michigan, we have what's called MJMA, which is Michigan Junior Masters Association. So at that point, I was bowling with like Jordan Richard and Haley Richard and Cindy Brummett and some of these other girls that were just absolutely incredible. And at the time, I felt like I had no business being on the lanes with them. I was like, these girls are so far surpassed me. They knew how to read ball reactions. They knew how to read the lanes. They knew, but I had my own. I did okay.
Yeah. When I think of that area of Michigan, the first name that comes to mind for me is Tom Smallwood,
Mhm.
because we all know the incredible story of him getting laid off and winning a major shortly after. They made a show about it, for crying out loud.
Right.
Are people in that area that are excited about improving their game in bowling? Do they look at him as something of a hero, as somebody to kind of pattern their own game after?
I think I wasn't in the juniors at the time when Tom Smallwood really got big, or maybe he was and I just wasn't super aware. I think now, though, people look at Andrew Anderson as that kind of figure. I think mostly because all of us grew up with him. So we saw him start at a really young age and people want to bowl like him. But I think Tom Smallwood's incredible too. I think he has a really unique game, which makes it fun and exciting to watch.
Yeah. Um, Tell me about the prospect of getting into high school bowling. A lot of the people that I talked to either didn't have that opportunity, maybe had other individual things going on, but it sounds like you went into it, head on, and really, accomplished a lot in high school. Was it a deal where you join that program, you get on that team, and several of the people and are ready to just go? Or did you have to kind of meet some folks and figure out your identity and how to kind of gel as a team?
So I knew a couple of them, mostly just from bowling in the youth with them prior to getting into high school. But I originally wasn't gonna bowl in high school. I played basketball, but for people who don't know me, I'm 5'2", and so um, as much as I loved basketball and as much as I wanted that to be my passion in my career at one point in time, it just wasn't in the cards for me. So um, I felt like bowling was the better option, especially once you kind of really think about it. Bowling, there's a lot of scholarships that you can get, even if you're not first. They go so far down and they give you so much money, which is really when you're a freshman in high school, knowing that you're going to go to college someday. That's super enticing. So yeah, I did know some. I wouldn't say I knew them all. I definitely had to kind of my freshman and sophomore year, I would say I kind of let them lead the way for me. But my junior and senior year was a completely different story. I was there to win, and there was not going to be anything to kind of stop that for me. So
Yeah. Was it a deal where you guys bowled Baker games, or did they mix in traditional games as well?
we did both. We did Baker. We would do 2 sets of Bakers, and then we would do 2 regular games. Um, so I was the anchor my freshman through senior year, so I got to bowl the 5th and 10th frame. And as a freshman doing that, I honestly didn't know what to expect. because some of these anchors in the Flint area at the time, I mean, I think 4 of them went off to bowl in college my freshman year. My sophomore year, I know one of them definitely did. And then my junior year, it started to be girls my age again. And I think 4 or 5 of those girls also went off to bowl in college. So it definitely, I had my work cut out for me.
Yeah. While you were in high school, you also had a 300 game at Gerlach's, and that was the first that any youth player had done, and any female had done at Gerlach's. What do you remember about that game, about that day?
Gosh, I remember it actually really clearly. My first 2 games were okay at that time for me. They were okay, right? Like they weren't anything I could go and brag about, but I didn't throw the ball great, but I threw it well enough to strike. And my last ball in the 10th frame, I had 2 pins standing. I believe it was the 5 and 10 pin, and I had the 7 pin spinning around the 5 pin to knock it down, to kick it down to the 10 pin.
Oh, wow.
And you just heard the whole bowling alley, fall, fall, fall. It was insane. And I jumped higher than I've ever jumped in my life. When I shot that 300, and yeah, it was, I didn't know at the time, right? Like most records that you make, you don't know at the time that you're doing it. So I had no idea that I was the first female to shoot a 300 in that bowling alley, and I also didn't know I was the first youth. And mind you, that bowling alley at that time has been open for 75 years.
Oh, wow.
75 to 80 years. So it has a pretty substantial length of time, and for me to go and just shatter some records at 16 was insane.
Yeah, I bet. Wow. The next year, you win a regional singles title in Saginaw. How big an accomplishment was that for people who aren't familiar with, how that's all set up?
Huge. You go in and you have to bowl 6 games, and you're bowling against 60 to 70 girls. And like I said, it came from an area that had some of the best bowlers in the state, really. And so for me to go out, and I led the whole time. I didn't know I was leading. I had no idea. Because my one fault, and still happens kind of to this day, is if I know where I'm at in the standings, I fall off. So we learned that at an MJMA tournament. My mom, really good at this. But I got into my 4th or 5th game, and the standings were out. And I noticed parents coming and talking to my mom, which wasn't totally out of the normal, but a little more than regular. So I was like, okay, well, that's a little odd. But the standings came out for the 5th game, and I went to go and look, and my mom and my high school boyfriend at the time went and stood in front of the standings, so I couldn't see it. And they go, just bowl a good game. Like, just have a good game this one, and it'll be fine. And
if that's not a tell, I don't know what is.
yeah. I was like, okay, fine. It is what it is. But yeah, no, it was a huge accomplishment, and definitely one that I am very thankful that I got to do. Yeah. So,
did you consider at this point, with all the success you're having in high school, did you consider going the next step in bowling in college?
I really wanted to. I really wanted to bowl in college. I thought I could do it. One of the biggest things with high school bowling is that you rely so heavily on your coach to promote you. And I didn't have that. I didn't have a coach. I didn't have kind of that core to push me to go and see what was out there. And by the time I was kind of ready to it was kind of almost too late. Um, and you know what? I don't have any regrets about bowling in college. I personally at that time I wanted to stay a little closer to home. Um, and I think if I would have bowled in college, I would have a different passion for the game.
Yeah, fair enough. Were you doing individual stuff to kind of stay sharp and compete in tournaments and things like that?
I bowled MJMAs up until I aged out, which I think you age out at 19 or 20 for MJMAs, depending on when your birthday is. So I bowled it my freshman and sophomore year. I actually got to qualify for the MJMA championship at the end of the year. And my first year I bowled really well my first two sets. And so the way this end of the year tournament works is I go in on a Friday night, we bowl 6 games. We come back Saturday morning, we bowl 6 more games. We go to lunch and we come back and we do 6 more and then we cut.
Okay.
So my first year I bowled my 2 sets were decent. My third set I fell off because I knew I wasn't cut. Didn't learn too well, I guess. But then the next year I was a little more determined and I was a little more aware of the situation and how this process worked. So I had 3 really good sets. I got to go into match play for Saturday night. So I came back that Saturday night and I bowled 6 more and came back Saturday morning and I bowled 6 more. And they went from, I think we had 50 girls. They cut to 10 and then they cut to 5. So I was in the top 10. I unfortunately didn't make it to the step ladder, but after I aged out of MJMA, I kind of didn't bowl. I didn't touch a bowling ball other than like I would go here and there on breaks or stuff for 4.5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
When you eventually came back to the sport after that, I mean, 4.5 years that's some time. I mean, did it take a while to, get back what you had gotten over all those years of competition?
Not too much. In a lot of ways, bowling's like riding a bike because it's so repetitive. You do the same motion all the time, every time, Now, whether you do it well is a completely different story. But same motion every time. So it was like I was 18 again and I was bowling all the time again. And I started out in just one league. I just did like a fun summer no tap league until I could join an actual league. And I joined a Monday night league. I lived in Nashville at the time. Joined a Monday night league and everybody there was super receptive of me, which was also really nice. But yeah, it was like riding a bike and it felt great to be back in a bowling alley because moving from Michigan to Nashville, it wasn't hard, but it's a change and I'm moving away from all my family, all of my friends, I'm doing all of this pretty much on my own. So to have bowling, it was kind of like a little piece of home with me.
When you get back into it and you start trying to make that ascent again, that's something I'm familiar with because I took a few years off. I want to say mid 2010s. There are little struggles along the way. I know the basic concepts are the same, but to maintain the consistency, to make the spares, it can be a lot, and there can be some frustrating moments. I want to put up a message that I got from Sarah Cashino Roberts, who told me that you are the most consistent, calm bowler that she's ever seen in her life, and that if you miss her mark on the lanes, it's not by much. Now, as you're, getting back into it, is it tough to maintain that calm part of your personality?
No, I don't think so. Mostly because that's me. I'm not gonna say that I don't get frustrated, because I do, and you can definitely see when I do. But I'm pretty calm, just naturally. I I just take it day by day or frame by frame. Or one thing that was one big thing I learned specifically in MJMA, is you can't get too far ahead of yourself, because if you do, that's when you really start to see a lot of mistakes, and you're really putting yourself out. You have one bad game, you come back and you try for a better game the next game. That's all you can do.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and have a
yeah,
short memory when things aren't going all that well.
yeah.
So you moved to Tennessee, you spent some
Hmm.
time in Indiana,
Yep.
and then you get to the Twin Cities.
Hmm.
Tell me about what it was like, not only being in, I'm guessing, a new place for you, but also, kind of breaking into a new bowling community and getting to know some of the terrific bowling talent that's all over that area.
Yeah. So me and my fiance, we moved 3 months before COVID hit. So we
Okay.
moved like in the middle of bowling season. So to join a team at that time, it's really hard. So we just joined like a have a ball league, and um, just something to keep us into the sport. Um, and then over the summer, we bowled whatever tournaments we could. It was still very like not open here, so sometimes we'd go to Wisconsin or whatever it was. And honestly, up until October, we thought we were going to move elsewhere again for my job. And then I got an offer to stay in Minneapolis, and we both thought about it and we agreed to stay here. And I was like, well, I guess we need to find a league then. We gotta find somewhere to bowl. And I bowled one CBA back in August, and I met some people, and I just reached out to them and I said, hey, do you know of any teams or bowling leagues that me and my fiance could join? And he was like, yeah, sure. Come on up to Cedarville. I'm sure we can get you on a team. So we bowled at Cedarville on Wednesdays. And then COVID had another little spout in like November, December timeframe. And after that, I'm on the Minnesota bowling messaging board, and somebody needed a sub at Texa-Tonka, and they're like, well, it's a scratch league. And I was like, that's fine. My fiance is a scratch bowler. It'll be fine. So he actually went out to Texa-Tonka, and he started there a couple weeks before I did, and I was getting the itch to bowl more than just one league. um, and at this time, he started to bowl like 3 leagues.
Oh, wow.
um, he was like, yeah, I'm gonna bowl Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And I was like, oh, okay, sounds good. I'm still on one night, so I would like to bowl else another time or elsewhere. And I ended up being able to join a team on Monday night, so I got to at least bowl. But the bowling community is really receptive up here. And they knew our names very quickly, which I think shocked me and my fiance. But when you have 2 new people that come into a city that you have been in for this whole amount of time, and they're both decent bowlers, it will definitely raise some awareness.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. This Masters League, and I'm assuming this is the Monday night at Texa-Tonka.
Yes. Yep.
That was one of the things that Tanya mentioned, was that you're a fierce competitor both against men and women, and that you averaged over 225 on a Masters League and won close to 70% of your games against opponents, all opponents. I'm assuming that we're talking about the same thing here, and if we are, I mean, there are a pile of good bowlers in that league.
Yeah. That league has some of the best bowlers in the state. I mean, obviously there's some really good bowlers in the state of Minnesota, but when you walk into our Monday Night League, you have people like Will Mafferty. And when Matt McNeil was living in the States, he was there as much as he could be. Carl Fitek. You have Anthony Stewart's another good one. Me and my fiance were both up there. It's a powerhouse league. Dave Ullman's another really good one. That's on that. It's a powerhouse league, and if you cannot throw strikes in that league, you're gonna have a rough time.
Yeah. And there's a lot of strikes to be thrown in that house. But that wasn't the only place that you bowled. You bowled a bunch of other leagues. You also bowled in some tournaments, including That's What I Do, which is where this picture came from. Tell me about those events. It's kind of the event that succeeded the ABT in the Twin Cities, and the format is pretty similar. Handicap and Mike, who runs them, really makes sure that the centers are putting out some challenging patterns. Tell me what made you interested in these events, and what's led you to be so successful in them.
Me and my fiance, obviously you can tell we love to bowl. And we prefer to bowl for money. And, there was a time where Hatten was kind of the only person putting out tournaments. He was the only one that was really continuing to appeal to the bowlers, that you didn't have to go far, which was, I think, really what attracted us to it. But now we have a pretty good friendship with Hatten and Danny, and they run really good tournaments. They make sure everything's smooth. And they run different every tournament is a little different. He has some consistency, but every tournament is a little different. And I think too, what makes it nice is, even though I may be a scratch bowler in a league house, obviously bowling on sport pattern is a little different. I shouldn't say little, it's very different. And so I think the best way he makes the playing field even is that he'll give us scratch bowlers some handicap, So it's not like I'm going up and I'm bowling with no handicap against somebody who gets 40 sticks. Because, even though I may be the better bowler and I should realistically be able to beat 40 sticks, it's nice to not actually have to beat the 40 sticks. It's nice to have a little bit of a buffer. And I think that's what makes his tournament so well ran. As for success, a lot of it is my fiance. I'm going to be honest. My fiance knows my game better than I do. He's put more effort and time into my game, and we have changed a lot of things in my game, and in no means would I be as successful if it wasn't for him. So if there's short patterns are not my friend, he's really good at figuring out what ball I should be in, or what lane, or where in the lane I should be in, because the other thing is I don't have a lot of hand. I don't swing the ball a lot. So he's really good at kind of helping me figure that out. But I also I'm competitive, and I will do my best to put myself in the best situation to win. So,
yeah. And his name is Austin York. He's also another regular in That's What I Do, and very successful in his own right. So it's got to be great to have, that in your corner as you kind of make your way through these events.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So tell me about the 868. We got to kind of talk about this in length, because it came a little more than a month ago. It was on March 7th. And again, you're in this Masters League. You've got a lot of competition there. And I'm going to put up some video here, because you opened up with a 300. And this is thanks to Sarah for sending this video for you, finishing that off. Tell me about what you were feeling. finishing off that first game?
So this is the second time that I have started off with a 300. I've only bowled 5 in my career, so I'm not nearly as what a lot of others folks have put out there. But my first 300 that I threw, I was 16, threw it in my third game. I finally broke my curse last year in March, almost a full year to the day. It was my first game. And then I threw another one in June in Michigan, and that was my 4th game. And then I threw another one a couple weeks before my 868, actually on the same pair, in my 4th game. And so when I threw this one, I told myself, because all of my other ones, I missed 800. I missed it by like pins. I said, Justice, this is your night. You're hitting that 8. And at that point, I didn't, I didn't care what it was. All I told myself was, you are hitting 8, because I've never hit. That was my first one. But I was also very calm. I was throwing the ball really well. That last ball in the 10th was probably the worst ball I threw all night.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. I was messaging with Matt McNeil a little bit. He said you were playing up 5 to 10 the entire night. Did you find that the lanes transitioned for you at all, or were you able to play pretty much the same shot that whole night?
I played the same shot all night. I think for me, so if I looked holistically at who was on my pair that night, I had one lefty, or I had 2 lefties. I had Matt McNeil and Austin Yankee, and then everybody was a righty. So Will Maffety, he cranks the ball. Dustin Irvin, he cranks the ball.
The biggest guy in here.
My fiance cranks the ball. You can hear my fiance. Don't leave a 10 pin. Don't leave a 10 pin. I had Anthony Stewart, who cranks the ball, and I had Wayne Jensen, who doesn't put as much hand in the ball, but he plays a little tighter than I do. And they just, I think, honestly, they fed me oil, and it just made it to where I could stay there all night. I didn't even move a board in my feet. There was halfway through the 3rd game, Austin Yankee looked at me and he said, on the left lane, he goes, that came in a little high. And I was like, okay. I thought it was a decent shot, but the next time I went up there, I just got a little hard. I got a little firmer with it. So I didn't give it the chance to go high. And that was about the only adjustment I made all night, was just a little change in my speed.
Yeah. I had to ask Matt, and, exemplified by the fact that you kind of told me you can't be a scoreboard watcher. I asked him, that nobody's going to talk to you directly about what's going on, but there's conversations going on. And I asked him what those were like, and he said nothing outside of the ordinary. But some people started to pay attention after she had about 18 in a row or something. Could you kind of feel that buzz growing and people kind of paying a little more attention as you just kept striking along?
Not really, up until I got into my 22nd. Because I honestly, I thought I was going to throw back to back. I was throwing the ball that good. And I might have been able to get away with it that last shot in the 2nd game, but got a little inside and left a flat 10. But honestly, Matt McNeil, his life partner or girlfriend, I was just talking to her all night, and I wasn't even really aware of what was happening, I guess. We were just talking about like work, and they were moving, so I was just, I think that helped, is where I couldn't see or wasn't really paying attention to what was happening.
Sure. As you get to the end, I mean, are you aware of, the significance of this? Because I asked Minnesota's USBC, what the high women's series mark was before you. And they said that the previous record was 867 by Sharon Carlson, who bowled it at the Minnesota State Mixed Tournament in 2013 at Mermaid. I mean, in order to beat it, you got to keep going, right?
Yeah. No, I had absolutely no clue. I actually, after I threw the last ball in my third game, I came back and I high-fived my fiance, and I go, first one, and he whispers in my ear, and he goes, you missed the women's state record by a pin.
Uh-oh.
So in my head, I was like, fuck. Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
I was like, okay. But I also, at this time, it didn't register what I shot.
Mhm.
I just knew I shot well. And my fiance finished his game, and he comes back to me, and he goes, do you know what you just shot? And I was like, no, I don't. Like, I haven't done the math. It hasn't. And he goes, you just shot 868. And I was like, I did what? Me? Me? Like, I did what? And then Dawn King, who is a server at Texa-Tonka, but she also bowls, she came up to me and she goes, you just beat the state record by a pin. And I was like, oh my God. Yeah, that was, I had no idea. So from a record perspective, I had no idea. And also, though, I will tell you that when I shot my 868, me and Anthony Stewart and my fiance and Wayne Jensen, we also broke the state record for mixed all team for 3 sets. So
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
So a pretty eventful night. Sarah was telling me, watching that amazing series in person, she said she was floored. She couldn't believe, again, how calm you were on the outside, and that she was super excited to be able, to watch it. I mean, to have something that not only has that historical significance, but obviously moves other people in that way, has got to be a great feeling, right?
Yeah, it's incredible. I was really calm. Looking back on it, I have no idea how I was so calm. I think because I knew going after 2, I was 589. I said nothing's stopping me from hitting 800 tonight, unless I absolutely just lost all carry and momentum, right? Like, but I told myself, I said, you're hitting 800. And that was my goal. I was going to get my first 800 series. My first sanctioned 800 series. And I didn't care if it was an 801 or if it was 87. You know what I mean? I wanted that first one. And about the 5th frame, I was like, okay, I have my 5th or 6th frame. I was like, okay, I have my 8. Now it's just money. And so, yeah, I just continued to throw the ball really well, and I got a little inside on the last ball in the 10th frame of that third shot, so I left a light 7. But it was incredible. And it's funny because the next week, Matt McNeil shot 835.
Okay.
Or 833 or something. And I was like, wow, good set, Matt. And he goes, thanks. I was inspired by you.
Not a bad thing at all. And I was going to say, you shot this pretty late in the season, but did you feel any pressure, any incentive that, you have this huge series, let's try and do it again, right?
Not really, right? Like, when you shoot 868, a lot of times that's going to be your high. A lot of times. Obviously, I still strive to bowl well and to, I would love to beat it. But it's not something that I'm in my head I need to beat. I want to come out. I want to bowl the best I can. I want to give my team the best chance to win. I want to win my points. But though I did though for the next 3 weeks on Monday nights, I went 8:30 or 8:68 my first three. My last three the next week I went 8:35, and the next week of my last three I shot 8:09.
Wow.
So I did continue to bowl well. It just wasn't in my first three.
Sure. Yeah. Wow, that's incredible stuff. Um, so would you say, you say you want to help your team win, and you have this high standard. Would you say you're a perfectionist? I mean, Tanya told me that every throw that you make, you're trying for perfection, and if something isn't working, you're gonna adjust to hit the right spot, and that bowling in several houses on different shots are going to help you understand the different oil patterns, so you know what to do if something's not exactly right.
I wouldn't say I'm a perfectionist, because I think there's some beauty in being imperfect with bowling. I would say that I am competitive. I think that's the best way to put it. Because there's a lot of times where I miss the transition, and my fiance has to tell me and there's a lot of times where I am just not in the right ball. I'm not throwing the ball well. I mean, that's bowling, right? But I think
Mhm.
that's what makes bowling beautiful, is that some nights you can just throw an 868, and some nights you could be doing the exact same thing, or you feel like you are, but you could shoot 600. So I wouldn't say I'm a perfectionist. I would say that I just strive to be competitive.
Yeah. We're at the end of this league season, and you've bowled a ton, in a lot of different places. So where do you go from here? I mean, we talked about the PWBA, but there's the summer to think about. There's next season. Do you continue bowling this many weeknights?
Absolutely not. So we're definitely gonna bowl over the summer. We're gonna bowl Thursday nights at Flaherty's. It's a trios league, and it's a really competitive league out there. And then we'll continue to bowl Hatten stuff. He throws out a Grimalkin and a 9-pin no tap on Wednesdays, and then the Grimalkins on Fridays, and it's $20 to bowl. You can cash out at $100, and so it's every week's a different shot, which I really like. So I think this year he's putting out like the US Open. He's putting out the team event pattern from like 2018. So we'll do that. And then we're going to nationals. We leave for nationals in June for men's. I'm going to women's nationals in the beginning of June. But really this summer, I'm going to be making kind of a pretty big change in my game. Currently, I plant at the fall line.
Oh.
So, which is good and bad, right? I think there's pros and cons to it. But I'm going to try to adjust to sliding at the foul line. I don't plan to do any of that until after nationals, because I want to go to nationals and be as sound as I can. But yeah, so that's kind of where we'll go for the summer. I'm looking forward to bowling definitely one night a week, and if optional two, it will be a nice change from 4 nights a week.
Yeah. I've got to ask, I mean, you're out there bowling in a Motive shirt. I've seen you holding the ripcord, in pictures after the series. Are you a Motive regional staffer, something like that?
I am, yeah. I got on staff back in November. Thanks to really Anthony Stewart, because he's on Motive, and at the time, Will Maffney was also on Motive. But there's no females in the state of Minnesota on Motive, so I think that kind of gave me a leg up on top of my credentials and how I bowl. So yeah, I used to throw just Storm. Like I was a die-hard Storm girl. I was like, I'm not changing. I'm throwing Storm. Not like that is what it is. And I went and I did a little test drive with motive stuff, and I was like, okay, we'll see. And I ended up I love it. I love my motive equipment. I think it was a really good change for me. Um, my fiance has been trying so hard to get me out of Storm because I don't have a lot of hand. And Storm, yeah, you can work with it if you don't have a lot of hand, but compared to Motive or even Brunswick, I mean, they're rolly and they're gonna go a little further for you when you have no hand. And that has been a huge change in my game. And I'm kicking out a lot more 10 pins, and it's been great.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. All right. So, you go from here. We've, we talked about the future a little bit. The one other thing that I forgot to mention in the whole chronological order of things is the Greater Flint Youth Hall of Fame, which you are a member.
Mhm.
How'd you find out, when you got in, and what was it like?
I got a message from Robert Plouffe, who is on the board for the Greater Flint Youth Hall of Fame. It felt great. It was a huge accomplishment for me. Like I've said numerous times, Flint has some incredible bowlers come out of that area. And every time I turned around, it seemed like somebody else I knew and I grew up with and I competed against was getting inducted. And I was like, when is it going to be my turn? Because I felt like I did bring a lot to the Flint area, maybe not as much as some of these other girls or guys. But I did feel like I brought a lot. And so I think it was like my last year of eligibility. I finally got inducted, and we haven't got to like have the ceremony or anything because I got inducted the COVID year, but it was kind of like a monkey off my back almost. Because it was one thing that I felt like was out there that I needed accomplished. And unfortunately, I already did all the work, right? So it's not like I could control it. It's not like I can go back and I can change it. What I did in my youth is what I did. So for them to finally recognize in my last year of eligibility that I was qualified and I met a lot of the criteria they were looking for to get inducted, I think it meant a lot to me.
Sure. You grew up there, but you've been in Minnesota a while. You've moved around a little bit. Where is home? Is Minnesota home? I mean, do you see yourself staying there, or is home really Michigan?
That's a great question. Michigan's not home for me. Michigan State, where I graduated from, is probably the most home I can consider it. But right now, I'm just taking it day by day. Me and my fiance eventually do want to go back to Nashville. That's where he's from. That's where we met. That's where he grew up. All of his family is there. So ideally, we want to go back to Nashville, and I would like to call Nashville home. But we're going to just take it day by day, year by year. A lot of it's really dependent on my job and what's open and when it makes sense for me to move. Because in my actual career, I have some really big dreams too. So it's just making sure we play to the right time.
Yeah. Well, best of luck in that too, because if you can match or exceed what you've done in bowling, you've got a great shot for some great things. You've seen this show before, and we kind of go off the sheet at the end by asking you to challenge somebody else, and it doesn't have to be the greatest bowling mind or pro in the world. We look for people who are passionate about the sport and have a unique story to tell. So Justice Schihl, who would you like to challenge to be on a future episode of Bowling with the Fev?
Oh gosh. You know what? I think Mike Hatten would be a really good option. Not only is he a bowler, but he runs a ton of tournaments. And he really challenges bowlers like myself and others to step outside of their comfort zone. And I think he could give a lot of insight on that whole process.
Yeah, I think that is a fantastic idea. I've tried to hound him a little bit, especially as this show was getting off the ground to come on. But
I'll hound him a little more for you.
Yeah, he does need to come on. So Mike, if you're watching, and you're interested in taking Justice up on her challenge, let me know. You know where to find me on Facebook, or you can email bowlingwiththefef@yahoo.com and tell Danny happy birthday for us, because today
happy birthday, Danny. Go read her books.
Yeah, she is an author, and that's kind of where the name Grimalkin comes from, right?
Yeah.
Is her books.
Winding Woods. She has 4 of them out there. Go read them.
Yeah, terrific author, and certainly great at tournament organizing as one of the girls in pink in those That's What I Do events. So our next live stream coming up next Wednesday, we have Paul Ridenour coming on from Waukesha, certainly an accomplished bowler in his own right, but also had a close relationship with the late Mo Pinnell and a unique perspective on his legacy. So we will hear all about that on Wednesday, April 20th, 6 p.m. Central here on Bowling with the Fef. Justice, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your bowling story with us.
Yeah, thank you. I hope you have a great rest of your night.
Thanks. You too. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you again next week.